A beggar comes to him and asks him for some food. And he hesitates to give him food, but ultimately he opens the box and tries to give him food. The delay in the process kills the beggar. And immediately the man could not withstand the idea that he is responsible for the death of that fellow. So what he does, he kills himself. He kills himself. Because he cannot withstand, because his total existence is shattered by the idea that he is responsible. If he had served him on time, he would have survived. He would have survived. But he did not do it. So that is why there are certain basic core human issues which we have suppressed so far must be surfaced. When you look at such a kind of pathetic situation, you cannot be normal. If you are normal, there must be something abnormal in your psyche. So these kind of issues may come onto the scene. And another important thing is, Bauman also proposed before his death, 1 week before his death, he published a slim volume, the title Retrotopia. People understood that the society cannot be improved and there is no possibility for further improvement, and we have to face calamities every day. So what is the solution for these kind of situations? So future, there is no guarantee that we will have a decent and pleasant life. Now in Retrotopia, he proposes to identify whether there were, even in pre-modern lifestyles, whether there were any kind of situations, contexts, where man did not have any kind of complex relation with nature, rather cordial relation with nature, with the fellow species and beings. So we have to explore those possibilities, and we have to think whether there is any possibility for reenacting them or bringing them back onto the scene and identifying some kind of solace in such a kind of a situation. So the ecotopia, after utopia, and retrotopia are two guiding principles that are going to influence life in the literature in times to come. Our perspectives have to change. There is a philosopher writer recently published a book, Philosophy in Jokes. That is the title of the book. In that book, there is a cartoon strip. A duck asks the philosopher. The philosopher is standing. At his leg, there is a duck. The duck asks the philosopher, "Sir, have you ever seen the world from the perspective of a duck?" The question is, have you ever seen the world from the perspective of a duck? He never saw. What happens if he sees the world from the perspective of a duck? The same thing happens what happened when you read the novel Metamorphosis by Kafka. He's a man, goes to bed as a man and gets up as an insect. When he gets up as an insect, the identity which he was asserting earlier as a human being and indomitable courage he was exhibiting, all gone. He became an insect. He is reduced to an insect. So his total perspective changes towards his fellow beings. So likewise, when you try to transform yourself and try to understand the life from the perspective of an animal, a bird or an insect or even a bacteria or even from the nature, your total perspective will be transformed. That is essential. And towards that, literature should move. Finally, I'll take some questions also. I'll conclude, and the forms of literature also going to change. Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, all these platforms are going to become the platforms for the literary production. People stopped already publishing poems in dailies and journals. They are going to publish in these platforms. And because of that, the literary forms also will change. Whatever the change in the form, the content will also change. It has to change. The attitude that inspired our literature so far is the typical modernist attitude. Now we understood, because of the consequences, the dangers involved in the modernist ideology. Unless we transform this self, nobody can save the humanity from, because the writers are the people who mold the ideology, who mold the total lifestyles. If they are not taking care of that, they have to involve in the collective suicide of humanity. This collective suicide of humanity is an expression used by Zygmunt Bauman. I'll conclude with his statement. What he says: civilization is fragile. Civilization is fragile. We are skating on the ice. We are skating on thin ice. We are skating on thin ice. There is a fear of a collective disaster. There is a fear of collective disaster, terrorism, genocide, and tsunamis. We can add viruses. So there is a danger. This danger must be anticipated by the men of letters. They should reflect in the literature, and in that way they transform the total attitude that has been given by the Western humanist tradition. We should incorporate in our thinking, our lifestyles, and our basic philosophy that guides our existence. Thank you very much for the patient listening of my presentation. Now it is up to Professor Sarada Madam.
Yeah, sir, thank you so much for that very elaborate lecture on reflections on COVID and literature, sir. You started off well that literature deals with uncommon things and literature stands the test of time. And you stressed on alienation and how the current situation has alienated the human beings and how there is a need for the human element in the current conditions. And you also closed with the terms like how the utopia has changed into ecotopia and retrobia, and you have enlightened us with different aspects of literature while taking us back to the past and then dealing with the modern times, and how the perspectives have to change in the modern times, and how the society and literature, the connection between society and literature too. It was a really enlightening lecture, sir, and we are really glad to have you today. I know that in spite of the busy schedule you had agreed to be with us today. We are really happy to have you, sir. And before we invite Professor Srikanth to read a poem of his, I just want to acknowledge my sincere thanks to the other participants from different universities. Professor Rajendra Prasad from Dravidian University, Kukkam, Chellapalli Swaruparani from Hyderabad Central University, Professor Shivakumar, Dr. Jayant, Dr. Moses, Dr. Mercy from Yogavemana University, Professor Sarada, Professor Sumakiran from SV University, Farida, my senior from Karnool KVR College, John Kennedy Paul, Professor Madhu Jyoti from Mahila University, Dr. Sambaya from JNTU Pulivendula, Dr. Srikanth, and many others, though I am not able to mention all the names here. We are extremely very happy to have you all here on this occasion. And with these few notes of acknowledgement, now I request Dr. Srikanth Popuri, Professor of English, Vasavi College, Machilipatnam. He worked as assistant professor earlier in Dravidian University, Kuppam, and his poems have been published in various countries too. May I now invite Professor Srikanth to give his evening poem, and we will have the question session after the poetry reading by Professor Srikanth. Now over to Professor Srikanth for his poetry reading. Welcome, sir. Professor Srikanth. Is Professor Srikanth here? I request Professor Srikanth to go ahead with his poetry reading.
You took around two on top of it.
COVID evening poem.
This needs 3-4 hours.
It's recorded.
Okay. How was it?
It is good.
When people are in front of you, that
Professor
is different.
Srikanth is not
This
here.
is okay.
Yes, I'm looking only at
Interaction.
Sheila,
Shaka, I'm just calling him. Just hold on. Yeah, hold on.
yeah.
Bharat? Bharat? 2 hours for that? 2 hours, total? 2 hours.
No, 2 hours, like 1.5 hours.
1.5 hours. We started at around 11:10.
Conversation close to
అదే ఉంది క్వశ్చన్ అన్న
That also we can.
ఇప్పుడు మన తర్వాత ఎడిట్ చేసుకోవచ్చా యూ కెనాట్ అప్లోడ్ దీస్ క్వశ్చన్స్ అండ్ ఆన్సర్స్ అప్ టు దిస్
That's sir.
యూ కెన్ స్టాప్ రికార్డింగ్ డైరెక్ట్
structure.
Sure.